going on, guys? Welcome back to Crypto Mainstream. So the focus of today's video is basically going to be a recap on our February challenge. So if you've been with us for a while, last month at the beginning of the month, we decided to set in a spending challenge basically for February. So I'm not a financial advisor, none of this is financial advice, but one thing I would highly recommend is that keeping track of your spending is such a good starting point. Whether you're in a lot of debt and trying to figure out a way out of it, if you've got crazy interest rates on credit card bills and you feel like you're not being able to find your way out of that hole, or maybe you have no debt whatsoever and haven't started investing yet and aren't sure when or how to kind of get into it, the very first step I think you should do is just start to figure out where exactly you're spending money and where you could find out places to save. So for February, I decided that I was going to keep spending the way I normally spend, but what I'm gonna do is at the end of the month, which is right now, we're gonna make a nice transition video where we're gonna find out where we could pull back some spending and then actually put all these ideas into action for March and then see how much we could save for March. And whatever we save is just gonna be extra investing money, whether we wanna throw that into crypto or if we wanna throw that into the stock market. It's just extra funds that we didn't have to spend last month. So I feel like this is a good idea just as a base point to kind of start figuring out what you wanna do with this extra money that's gonna be coming your way. All right, guys, so let's jump into the numbers here. This was incredibly eye-opening. I know that I like to spend, and I already had an idea of where I overspend. So one is definitely food and entertainment. I pay for a food delivery service that brings me food, Monday through Friday, but the food really only lasts me like 4 days. Normally it's done by Thursday. So I'm always eating out for meals Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I know that's like a huge ticket item for me when it comes to tracking my spending and where I could save for March. So I have a few categories here, and I'll actually start at the top. So I basically broke this down into 4 things. So one category was like my bills and kind of like the must pay things. So that includes rent, my car insurance, my health insurance, my life insurance, my phone bill, and then I also threw my gym membership in there just because, one, I couldn't really find another category for it, and it's something that I pay every month that, as of right now, I'm not willing to cut back on. So we've got that section, then food and entertainment, and I'm not sure if you can see my thumb right now, but I am scrolling because there was a lot of numbers in there this month. I have a miscellaneous, which just kind of has stuff like I got my hair cut, some weird like Target runs just for like toiletries and stuff around the house. I went to the dentist, you can tell. No? Okay. And then also my car was its own category because my poor car had a nightmare of a month. So the car was actually one of the cheapest. The miscellaneous and the car were cheap. The food and entertainment was super high, and then the bills were up there as well. So I'm not gonna go super in deep into everything, but one thing was my bills just for the month was a little over $2,000. It came in at, $2,268 and some change. And the big ticket item there was, of course, my rent. So I pay $1,600 for rent, which, some people are probably thinking that's absolutely outrageous. That's your first place you should look to try to cut back on some spending. But I love my situation, and I'm very close to San Francisco, so this isn't too crazy. So I think everything's fine in this category for now. As for food and entertainment, this is where things got real out of hand. So my food and entertainment spending just for the month of February was a little over $3,700, which once I looked at everything I spent my money on, it is crazy to see how much I'm eating out, how much I'm paying for, entertainment stuff. Like I do golf on the weekends. That was a big ticket item. That stuff adds up. As well as Ubers. Ubers was a huge one that I never paid attention to. I do Uber a lot when I go places. If I go out to dinner with friends, I always choose to take an Uber over driving. And for the month of February, it was $550 for Uber, which is crazy. So I'm definitely gonna focus on that for March, to try to cut back in that section. Also, my food service that I do, it normally brings me food for Monday through Friday. It doesn't even last me till Friday. It's normally like a Monday through Thursday food meal plan. So I'm paying almost $800 a month just to have these meals delivered when I'm still eating out 7 to 8 meals a week. So that's another thing that we're gonna really try to focus on in March, is bringing that back a little bit. I think I'm just gonna cancel the food service. So initially that'll be 800 down, and then I might be spending 400 in groceries maybe. So I feel like that's another good one to look at. My poor car. I love this thing to death, but man, it had a rough run this month. I ended up spending about $1,100, a little more, about $1,160 on my car. I was rolling through an intersection and I went to hit the brakes and the brakes just did not engage. I rolled straight through the intersection. Luckily, no one was there, so I had to have it towed straight to a car shop or a car repair shop. They ended up working on my brakes. That cost me a good amount of money. And then just by the universe really trying to test me in the month of February, I go and I park at work, and when I get out of work, I come back and flat tires. So it was awful. But anyways, that was about $1,160 just for the car. That's gonna be $1,100 that we're not spending in March no matter what. So that's gonna be another way to kind of save. So that's just more investment for March, what we're looking for. But when we go back to the food and entertainment, there's just so much stuff. I have 4 Safeway runs that were to get food when, again, I'm already paying for a food service, so that should be something I should be able to pull back on. And all the eating outs, like when I go out to dinner in restaurants, there's some big tabs on there. So going over everything, again, it was stuff that I never thought of. Like if you asked me how much I spent on Ubers in the month of February without me tracking my spending, probably would have said maybe $100, maybe a couple $100. But when you actually see the numbers and you add all this stuff up, you start to really get a grasp on where your money is going and where you're able to save. So I suggest highly making your own list if you haven't already. If you were with us in February and you followed along and did this yourself, big props to you, because now you're just a month ahead of the game. For someone who is just seeing this video for the first time, or even just trying to do their own spending challenge or just tracking your spending for the first time, I would say go back and check all your credit cards for last month, all your ATM withdrawals, your debit card transactions, and just see where you're at and try to get an idea of where your money's going. Because once you know where your extra money's going, it's a lot easier to try to build a plan around it for how you could save and pull back on some of that spending to get a little bit more extra cash in the month. All right, so looking back at February, I know I have my $7,700 of spend. There's a few things on here that I know are not going to be an issue in March. For instance, the car stuff. The car was kind of random, and it was some extra spending that I normally never spend during the month, so that kicked it up a notch. And then the miscellaneous, that's all pretty standard stuff. I mean, I'm not getting my hair cut or going to the dentist every month, so there'll be some savings there for sure. And then the one that I actually have to be very proactive with is going to be the food and entertainment. I'm thinking just the food service alone, if we nix that and we start going to the grocery store and actually putting in the work to just make my own meals, that's going to be a big ticket item that I'm going to be able to save a lot there as well. As for the bills section, yeah, I could call some of my insurance companies and see if I can maybe lower my rate or something like that, but I don't think that's going to be where I'm going to save the most. I'll probably keep that relatively close to the same. Maybe I could get it down like $100 or something like that. But the food and entertainment is where we're going to focus for March. So the whole goal, now that we have the number of what we've spent, is going to be trying to find a number of how much lower we want to be. So I want to go from $7,700 to $5,000. I think that's a big drop. It's going to be a little easier than it sounds because of the car issues, but it's also going to make me kind of tone down my spending on the food and entertainment section. So our goal for March is going to be $5,000. And if I can get $5,000, that means that's another $2,700. That took me way too long to get that math. $2,700 of extra investing power that we'll have. Another thing, again, I'm not a financial advisor, but every person I follow or every blog that I read or anyone that I listen to who is up there in the finance world, who has a lot of knowledge on personal finance, one thing you should always have is just an emergency fund. And here's a perfect example. So I've always had a $3,000 emergency fund just for when weird stuff happens. And I would almost say, before you start investing in crypto in the stock market, if you don't have any savings or anything like that, start putting a little bit of money aside, maybe every week, just to build yourself an emergency fund. Because there are times when things that are just unexpected happen. And if you don't have money to pay for it, they could be devastating. So I would say track your spending, try to get a little bit of a savings going, at least definitely an emergency fund to start, and keep that money there just for when stuff like this happens. Because you never know when... I mean, how often are you gonna have your brakes go out and get flat tires on the same day? Probably never, but it happened to me, and luckily I had an emergency fund set up, so I just came out there, and now next month I'm just gonna replenish it, and then we'll see what else we have left over for some extra investing. All right, and that's it. So we did the February challenge, and it was eye-opening. I keep using the term eye-opening because it really was. When I was looking at these numbers, I couldn't believe how much I was really spending. I had such a different idea in my head. And so now when you actually track the numbers and see exactly where the money's going, it is gonna be a lot easier to build a plan around that. So we've got my plan. I'm gonna try to cut back about $2,500 in spending this month. I'll definitely have a March recap to see exactly how we did. It could be better, it could be worse. But again, if you haven't been someone who's kept track of spending, I would suggest definitely either looking at your last few months and just seeing where your money's going, or March could be your starting point. While I'm trying to do my saving one, you could be trying to do your February challenge of just keeping track of where you spend your money. All this is gonna be super huge for you in the future when it comes to investing and getting some extra money in your pocket. So hopefully I could stick to it. Hopefully I can get this extra $2,500 in savings, and I'll probably throw it right into crypto when I get it. Maybe a couple stocks, we'll see what's going on, but stock market hasn't been that great as of yet. But we preach dollar cost averaging here, so it doesn't matter. We're always gonna be in the middle. So we'll see you next time. All right. Some finger guns, some awkward cuts, something for you to keep in later and make me look like a goober. Done.